grip is called a side lever grip or a funny grip. There's probably more names, like so many things in pole, but those are the two that I hear it most frequently called. It's a very common grip that's used in Chinese pole moves, and there's many variations of it. So today we're just going to go over some of the options that you can use with this, working on it for inverts, for a brass monkey, for a leg hang. Also, you can work on it for an iron X, a variation of an iron X, and eventually it turns into, like I said, there's a lot of Chinese pole tricks that come from this grip. So let's talk about what's happening with your grip. First of all, it's going to feel really weird. Your inside arm, when you start initially, think of lining up your hip. You could either start at your belly button lined up or at the same side hip as arm. That's going to be the inside arm. Your arm is going to come through and you're going to bring your elbow just past the pole, okay? So my elbow is just clearing the pole. So I'm feeling the pole on the lower portion of my outside of my bicep here. And then your hand is going to wrap around, okay? My fingers are all together, common grip for Chinese pole because fingers become a liability. They're just wrapping. With this, there's a push and pull. So my fingers are pushing that way. My bicep is pushing that way, okay? So it's this motion is happening with your arm. Once again, going to feel really weird. Height of your hand, just like when you start with regular inverts, you're going to want to start initially with this arm lower. As soon as it starts to get above parallel, you're going to start to lose your mechanical advantage. Over time, you can reach up high, pull up, and then into it. But initially starting out, you want to try and think of having that arm be parallel or below, because that's going to give you the best leverage. This hand, yes, we're wrapping fingers. That being said, there are variations where people will go a true grip or a claw grip. So those are also options. You can definitely play around with those. It depends on what you're doing. Personally, I like to stick with the fingers together with what I think of as being the true honey grip or true side lever grip as used in Chinese pole, just because, like I said, in Chinese pole, from training that for many years, you learn how to try to keep your fingers together as much as possible so you don't break one, okay? Unless you're doing something crazy acrobatic, generally speaking, we're okay wrapping our fingers. But like I said, it's kind of a big concept in Chinese pole because there's so many flips and quick pace things and that sort. In this, you can go with whichever grip you feel most comfortable with. And also you'll find later on, some transitions will work with one type of hand grip, some will not. I find that this one works with pretty much every transition I've come upon that uses this funny grip. When I have the fingers wrapped, sometimes they get stuck. Okay, so, but like I said, do you. So this top hand, like I said, it can be fingers wrapped, true, claw. Top hand, likewise, can vary in grip. Number one preference on this would be thumb down. It's a cup grip, okay? Also, it can go to a true grip. But look at what happens to my elbow. When I transition it to a true grip, generally speaking, that forearm drops down versus in the cup grip, it tends to be up, okay? Once again, personal preference. I find most of the transitions I like this with my fingers all together, but you can play around with them. If initially this just feels way too funky and this feels a little bit more secure, feel free to play around with that, okay? So my arm is coming through, so you can see that, like, I don't want to have space between me and the pole. I want to have some leverage here because otherwise the farther this elbow has to go out to try and push into the pole, the less strength you're going to feel like you have, okay? So the closer you have it to either your hip or your midline, you're really going to feel like you have a much better leverage, okay? Top hand, how high it goes is going to be personal preference, just like in a regular invert. You know, some people prefer to have their hands right next to each other. Some people prefer to reach up. You're going to have a similar thing with this. I would say, generally speaking, I start with my hand just a few inches above, okay? If it's too high up, you're going to lose your mechanical advantage. If it's too close, depending on length of your arms and things, you may also lose your mechanical advantage. So just place it there, okay? Thumb is down. Like I said, thumb is not wrapped. Now, what are we doing with our body? Initially, before you try inverting with this, you want to start to get used to this feeling of this push and pull because this hold is very reliant on leverage, much like a cup grip shoulder mount. Like a cup grip shoulder mount, if you don't get that push and pull, things are coming down, okay? So to start with this one, a good way to work is you're just going to do some little kicks that will eventually turn into what can be an iron X, okay? But initially, just little kicks. As you do these kicks, I want you to think of trying to keep your hips in line here. Yes, once we get to the brass monkey invert and the invert to a leg hang, we are going to let ourselves pike. But initially, to feel this, picture you're in a hallway and you can't kick this way. You can only kick this way in line, so you don't kick anything. Okay? So before you even kick your legs, Feel this push, okay? So you're going to push your elbow or the lower part of your bicep that direction. Your hand is pulling this direction, and you're just going to start with the leg that's away from the pole. Remember, top hand is pulling that direction, okay? Make sure you drop your head just a little bit, okay? Head goes the other side, kick. Just a little. And what you want to feel is just a little increased pressure. What tends to happen for a lot of people when they first start, because this just feels so weird, is they do this, which means this was not pushing and pulling. If you're getting farther away from the pole as you do this, your push and pull is not happening. Okay, which is why I said think about trying to initiate that this pulling motion before you even kick. Something that kind of helps for me to think about when I'm going to this invert is I think about my hands trying to pull the pole to my hip. Okay, and think of it like if you watch my elbow, as my hands pull, it automatically kind of pushes this that way, right? Okay, so head drop, think of pulling to your hip. Boop, there. Okay, so your torso is going to tip. You're not going to stay just on this side of the pole. The goal is to have your torso tip across. Okay, so start with these, both sides. Feel that push and pull, little kick, and down. Okay, like I said, try to make sure your kick is not going forward initially. Really think about engaging your glutes and trying to keep your torso in this line initially. So do a few of those. If those are feeling okay and you actually feel like, okay, like I might have even like a millisecond of hang time, or at least I'm not coming farther away from the pole. As you start to feel more and more comfortable with this, eventually you'll take it to an invert. Make sure you're feeling comfortable with this hold first, of course, before you take it to an invert. This is a great way actually to get into a brass monkey because your hands don't end up getting in the way. You can go straight from an invert into a brass monkey. You can also take this as an invert into an outside leg hang. Okay, so once again, with these, you can switch up the hands variations however you want to, whichever feels most comfortable. If we're going to go to an outside leg hang, now instead of in that iron X where my legs were kicking here, I'm going to kick this way, right? So much like in a regular invert, we would kick this way. Same, I'm going to kick this way, okay? Which means this bicep has got to be pushing into the pole as I kick, okay? The difference is, well, I mean, there's many of them, but in a regular invert to an outside leg hang, the pole is in our armpit, which means this arm is already free. It does get a little funny with this one going to an outside leg hang because this arm kind of ends up a little bit trapped, right? So as soon as that knee hooks, you have to circle that arm around, okay? But it is just kind of a fun way to kind of change up your invert depending on where you're going. Maybe you didn't want to stay in the outside leg hang. Maybe you have another transition and you don't want to sneak that hand through. Okay, so you can take it to an outside leg hang. To a brass monkey works really well because that arm is already in position. Okay, so to an invert, outside leg hang, we kick with the outside leg. For the brass monkey, same in that we're kicking forward. Okay, we're doing that piking motion versus the out to the side motion like we did initially in our get a feel for it. I'm going to kick with my inside leg. Okay, so outside foot plants, even with the pole. Don't start way back here. Start where you're already feeling this pressure. Before you even kick, you want to make sure you already feel that pressure because especially if this is kind of, you're still adapting to this feeling of this invert, if you think kick, your body is probably not instinctually going to get a feel for that push and pull. Okay, so just like I said before doing the outside leg hang, make sure you're feeling solid with these side little hangs before you try taking it all the way upside down. Okay, so to the brass monkey, outside foot is going to step about even with the pole. My inside leg is going to kick all the way through to hook. Okay, so kick, hook, slide the hands down. You can see, and go into your brass monkey. So kind of a nice way to, like, similar to a shoulder mount in that your hands don't get in the way, but I find for a lot of pullers, it doesn't take as much strength. Yes, you have to get past that initial like weird technique of this grip feels really weird, but the strength required for this side invert is more closely similar to a regular invert versus a shoulder mount, which sometimes takes a little bit more strength to get into, okay? So side lever grip, work on your iron X kicks, dynamic and static. As you start to get comfortable with it, you know, try taking them into hold, just hold. Initially start with just a little boop and down. And then over time, try to stick and hold. You have an invert to an outside leg hang. You have an invert to an inside brass monkey. Okay, so 3 different variations you can play around with this side lever grip, getting you comfortable with it, because like I said, down the road, there might be a lot of other transitions and tricks that work through this. Fun way to change up your inverts, different way to get upside down, different way to challenge yourself, different way to get into different shapes. Okay, make sure you're equally trying on both sides, just like everything else.